Hello, my name is Con, and welcome to part 23 of Let's Build a 2D Platformer in the Godot game engine. In this tutorial, not so mini series, we're building this 2D Platformer video game. In this game, of course, you control a little player on screen using keys on your keyboard. Of course, you can walk and run and jump and fall. You can explore a large level, collect coins, jump on and squash enemies, get hit by and get hurt by enemies and lose lives. You can shoot fireballs, climb ladders, do wall jumps. You know how a 2D platformer game works, of course. If you've not been watching this series on how to create this game along with me from start to finish, step by step, I'll go ahead and put a link to this whole series playlist here on YouTube up on the screen right now. You can go ahead and check that link out to see all of my Godot 3 videos. In this video, in part 23, we're going to be improving the way that our little character gets hurt whenever they hit an enemy in the game. Right now, if your little character hits the side of an enemy in your game, well, you get hurt. And that means that you're going to turn red for a few seconds, but right now it doesn't work the way exactly I want. Traditionally in a game, when you get hurt, you don't only turn red, you should instead blink between red and white, I think. So we're going to be adding blinking as you're hurt in this game quite rapidly for any number of blinks that we want to specify as the creator of this game. But also currently when you're hurt in this game, you can still get hurt again while you're currently hurt, which we don't want to have. And when you're hurt, you can still collect coins and you can still shoot fireballs. We're going to disable those features so that you can only just get yourself to a better position so you can't get hurt again when you're currently blinking between that red and that white color. Right now, if I'm in my level 1 scene in my game and I go ahead and press play scene, just to see how the game currently looks, if I go ahead and press the left arrow key on my keyboard and jump up, if I currently am hurt, well, I can get hurt again. You can see I lost 2 lives. And right now, if I go ahead and get hurt and restart my game, if I'm currently hurt, well, I can collect coins and I can shoot fireballs, and I don't want those 2 things to happen. So we're gonna go ahead and make our hurt state a little bit improved in this video. Right now, when you get hurt by an enemy, that means that you are touching an enemy's area called its hurt zone. Now, I created this enemy earlier in the series. If you have not seen that video, I'll go ahead and put a link to that up on the screen right now, up there in the top right. When you touch an enemy's hurt zone, your enemy actually calls a function on your character called ouch. So I'm going to go ahead actually and take a look at my character's node pieces. So I'll go ahead and click on the little icon here to go into my character's scene so we can see our character's nodes. And while we're here, I'll go ahead and click on my little script icon to jump into my character's code. And as I explore my code, I should find a function here on my line 178 called ouch. Now, this function, of course, gets called whenever you touch an enemy from the side and you enter that hurt zone. And you can see a few important things related to what we're actually going to be working on in this video. In this ouch function, specifically, whenever we get hurt, we change our color, and that is done with this method call called setModulate, which in this case changes our color to transparent and red. Now I'm going to go ahead and take this code. I'll go ahead and press Control X on my keyboard to cut it, and I'm going to move it down to near the bottom of this function here. So at the bottom of ouch, I'll paste right above timer.start. Now that's actually the next part of this. Right now, when you get hurt, and your ouch function is called, this timer, which is actually a part of our character scene right here, it's a node, it starts. And this timer, if I go ahead and actually select it in my node tree over here and take a look at its properties on the right side of my screen, it is a timer that counts down for 2.5 seconds just once. So it's a one-shot timer for 2.5 seconds. And when it reaches its end, when it times out, it has a signal. I'll go ahead and go over to my node tab here where you can see the list of my signals. It has a timeout signal, which is calling the next function here called onTimerTimeout. And what happens here is we're changing our color and our opacity, our alpha value, to regular again. So regular colors are 1, 1, and 1 with an alpha value of 1. That means an opacity of totally solid and not transparent at all. So basically we turn transparent and red for 2.5 seconds and then we go back to normal. What I'm going to do in this video is change this timer so that it's no longer, I'll go back to my inspector, a one-shot timer, because I want our character to blink back and forth, and we can accomplish that mechanism, that blinking, by making this timer not a one-shot, instead a looping timer. So I'll turn off one shot and my blinking is going to go faster, much faster than 2.5 seconds for each blink. So I'm going to change this wait time to something along the lines of 0.2. So every 0.215 of a second, we're going to blink colors. To accomplish this, I'm going to keep track of how many times my little character has blinked. So I'm going to go all the way up now to the top of my code just for a moment, because I'm going to create a new variable. I'll go ahead and make a new var here called hurt. And this is not going to act like a Boolean value, like I'm hurt or I'm not hurt. Instead, I'm going to initialize this variable with a number, and the number is going to be 0, because we're going to have this hurt variable act like a counter that keeps track of how many times you've blinked. And if it's all the way back down to 0, well, that means you're just in your normal state, you're not hurt. But when we collide with an enemy, this hurt value is going to go up to something along the lines of about 18 or 20, and that means we'll blink 18 or 20 times. And then when we run out of blinks, we'll go back to being not hurt again. So I've got that variable set to 0. By the way, this little colon means that we are implying a strict data type to this variable. So hurt cannot be assigned now, because I've said, hey, I want hurt to only be a number, or in this case, an integer, all the time. If I didn't have that colon, I could later on in my code assign hurt to any other kind of value that I want, but the colon ensures that it can only ever be assigned a number variable, in this case an integer. So that's why we're doing it that way. I'm going to go back down to my hurt function in my character's code, or the ouch function down here, and I'll go ahead and make my code a little bit bigger on the screen. When I get hurt, when this ouch function is called, and of course we lose a life, we jump up and jump to the left or right, indicating that we're hurt, and we release our player left or right keyboard buttons, and we set our color to transparent red, and we start the timer. We're going to actually at this point take that hurt variable. I'll go ahead and say hurt, and I'm going to make it equal to something about 18 or 20. I'll try 20 and see if that seems like it's blinking for too many times. Now, right now we are changing the color of our character using setModulate, which is a method that's built into GDScript, and we're giving setModulate a new color, which will basically change or alter the color of our character's sprite. And we're giving it this color 4 values, the first 3 of which are for the red, green, and blue, the RGB color values that we're shifting our character by. And the 4th value is the alpha value, how transparent we want our character to become. In this case, I'm going to change the character right away, not to transparent red. Instead, I'm going to shift my character to be more bright. And to do this, I'm actually not going to set my values to 1, 1, and 1 again for red, green, and blue turned all the way back up to its natural value. Instead, I can actually artificially make my character brighter, in other words, closer to white, by changing these values to a higher value. In this case, I'm going to try 10 and 10 and 10, which will really make it very bright and make it washed out and white. What I'm going to do here is change my alpha value all the way back up to about 0.9, just a little bit transparent. Otherwise, my character will look more like a ghost and not like they're hurt. So there we go. Our character is now hurt. The hurt is set to 20. Every time our timer times out, every 0.2 seconds, this function is going to be called. Every 1/5 of a second, therefore, I want to subtract 1 from hurt, because I want my hurt to count down the number of times that it's blinked. So I'm going to say hurt minus equals 1. And so right now, my character, every time it blinks, will count down from 20 to 19 to 18, all the way back down to 0, hopefully, and it'll keep going, but we'll go ahead and stop that in a minute. After we subtract 1, what I'm going to say is if my hurt variable is equal to 0, I want to do a few things. I want to set my timer first of all. So I'll go ahead and select my timer. I'll say $timer dot. I want to tell my timer to stop when my hurt variable counts back down to 0. So I'll say timer dot stop, and I'll type my round brackets at the end because I'm calling a method, of course. I'm going to set my color back to normal. So I'm going to actually go ahead and copy that set modulate method call down to right there. Control C and Control V, of course, to copy and paste. And I'll change my coloring back to 1, 1, 1, and 1 for totally opaque, solid, normal colors on the character sprites. But if my character is blinking and they haven't yet gone down to the hurt variable being at a value of 0, well, I'm going to make an else here. So I'll press enter and backspace and say else. What do I want to have happen when my character is blinking? Well, I actually want them to blink. So I'm going to call that set underscore modulate method again, and I want to blink between that same bright white color and transparent red. So I'm actually going to do something a little bit sneaky here. I'm going to use what's called a ternary operator, otherwise known as an inline if statement in GDScript. What I can do here is say set modulate. That means make my character have a different color, but in these round brackets, I can have an if and an else statement all in one line. So what I'm going to do here is say set the modulate color of my character to, well, I'm going to just go ahead and copy this color that I've defined to make my character bright white and copy it. I'll press Control C and click down here in the round brackets and paste with Control V, of course. I'm going to make the color of my character this bright white color again, but only when this hurt variable is an even number. When it's an odd number, I want the character to look like a transparent red version of itself. So I'm going to say right here, make the color, well, bright white, but only if the hurt variable is an even number. Now, how do I check that? How do I say if hurt is an even number? Well, it turns out that there is a math operator, a math symbol like plus, minus, times, or divide that can check to see a remainder very easily. It's called the modulus symbol, and it looks like actually the percent symbol. But when you use this in computer science, in particular with math in computer science, you can check to see if hurt modulus 2 is equal to 0. Remember that this is the remainder operator. So what we're basically saying here is if hurt divided by 2 has a remainder of 0, that means it's an even number, then we'll set our color to bright, basically white, but a little bit transparent. Otherwise, I can actually go ahead and write an else here if my hurt variable is not an even number. So otherwise, I can set a different value at the end here. So I'll copy that color and paste it over here, but I'm going to make my character, transparent. So I'll actually make this a little bit more transparent, maybe 0.7, but I need to make the color more red than green or blue. So I'm going to change these colors to 1, and then I'll try 0.3 and 0.3. So when there is more red and less green and less blue, that means your character will appear more red, and 0.7 is transparent. That should just about do it. We don't need this bottom line of code anymore. We don't want the timer to always change the color back to normal colors at the very end. So I'll go ahead and delete that line right there. But let's go ahead and press Control S to save. I'll go back to my level 1 tab right here. If you need to pause the video, I'll go ahead and put that code back up on the screen right now. I edited and moved these 3 lines of code and changed basically all of the code in my onTimer timeout function. With my level 1 tab selected though, I'll go ahead and press play scene. When my game loads and I jump up and I get hit by an enemy, I should still bounce back, but now I'm blinking between white and red, and it times out once my hurt variable has counted all the way back down to 0 again. So that looks quite good. But right now, if I play my game, in fact, I'll go back to my 2D workspace and I'll unmaximize my workspace and press play scene again. I'm still able to get hurt when I'm hurt, and I'm still able to collect coins and shoot fireballs while I'm blinking, and I don't want that. To stop me from getting hurt and from collecting coins while I'm currently hurt, I'm going to go ahead and play with Steve's collision layers and collision masks. Now, right now I've realized that my character's collision layers and masks aren't set up very well at all. And I say that because when I select the Steve instance that's in my level 1, well, his collision layer and mask is set up one way, but when I go into Steve's scene and select the root node of Steve in his own scene, the collision layer and mask is set up to its default, and I don't want that. So in Steve's scene, with the root node selected, I'm going to make sure that Steve is on layer 1, the collision layer 1, which is the player layer. However, I want Steve to only know how to detect, well, if I go back to my level 1 and look at this Steve, he knows how to detect, well, platforms and fall zones and items as well as enemies. However, these two last layer masks actually are not necessary and overcomplicate our game. Because our coins are areas and they themselves are responsible for detecting if they come into collision with Steve and not the other way around. And the same thing is true with enemies. In fact, the enemies are responsible for detecting Steve and not Steve for detecting the enemies. We actually don't need Steve to have these two layer masks turned on. So I'm going to go back into my Steve scene and select the root node. So this will apply to any instance of Steve that I have in any level now once I edit these layers and masks here. Steve's going to be on layer 1. However, I'm going to go ahead and click this little ellipses button right here. I'm going to uncheck player and I'm going to turn on just platforms and fall zones. I want Steve to be able to detect platforms and fall zones, but the other things will not be detectable by Steve. Those items themselves will detect Steve. So there we go. I'll press Control S to save that scene. If I go back to level 1 now and I select my instance of Steve, I can go ahead and press this little refresh or reset button, which will make this Steve take on the layers and masks that I've just set up inside of Steve's scene. So they're not altered just for this one instance. Now that I've done that, are we fixed? Can I still collect coins and get hurt again if I'm hurt? Well, yes. But what I want to do when I get hurt is actually now very simple. When I touch the side of an enemy and my ouch function gets called, I simply want to turn off my character's layer entirely. So I basically want to turn that off. The reason being is because when my character isn't on any layer, the enemies and coins can't detect that Steve is entering the hurt zone or the coin itself to be collected or for Steve to get hurt. Once my timer runs totally out, or once hurt goes back down to 0 and I've blinked as many times as I need to, well, we can turn this layer back on again. Does that make sense? To do this, let's go ahead and jump into Steve's scene and jump into Steve's code, because in my ouch function, I'll go ahead and make my workspace bigger. When I get hurt and I set my color to bright white and I set my hurt value to 20 and I start my timer, right in here, I want to call a method that's going to turn off that collision layer and make my character not be on any layer at all. To do that, I'm going to call the method called set_collision layer bit. And it's gone ahead and prompted me with a little code hint. So I will press enter to make that simpler for myself. Now, if I go ahead and unmaximize my workspace and take a look at my Steve character, if I go ahead and click on that root node of my scene, this bit right here is actually bit 0. All of the bits are numbered starting from 0, even though you see these numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is bit 0. And right now its value is set to true. If you want to turn it off, we want to turn bit 0's value to false. And to turn it back on, we'll set bit 0's value to true again. That's what that method that we're just typing right now needs us to do, is give it two parameters, the bit and then the Boolean value true or false. So back into Steve's code, I'll go ahead and maximize my workspace again. Set collision layer bit, it needs two values. It needs a bit number, in this case 0, and I'll put a comma and I'll say false. We've just removed Steve from his own layer. Now, when my timer times out, when I've blinked as many times as I'm going to, well, I want my timer to stop. I want to reset my color, but I also want to put Steve back on his own layer. So I'm going to copy this set collision layer bit method call. I'll press Control C, and I'm going to paste it right down here, except at this point, I want to make bit 0, I'll leave it at 0, turned to true. And that should just about do it. With that code, my character should not be able to get hurt again, and he should not be able to collect coins anymore while he's hurt. Let's go ahead and check that out. If you want to pause the video to get this code for yourself, you can go ahead and pause the video right now, but I'll press Control S on my keyboard. I'll go back to level 1. In fact, I'll press Control S. It's not saved yet, and I'll press play scene. When I play my game and I get hit by an enemy, can I get hurt again while I'm hurt? Nope. And I cannot collect coins. That's great. If I am hurt though, can I shoot fireballs? Yes, I can. To stop that from happening, that's just going to be a simple fix in my character's code. If I jump back into my script workspace and maximize my code on screen, somewhere in my character's code, back from that video in which we made our character be able to shoot fireballs, I'll go ahead and put a link to that video up on the screen right now. We made a function in our character's code called fire, and here it is on my line 153. Basically, we can shoot a fireball with this function if we press the fire action key on our keyboard, which in my case is the letter F on my keyboard, and we can shoot only if we're not near a wall. I'm going to go ahead and add one last condition or Boolean expression to this if statement. In other words, I'm going to say if I'm pressing fire and I'm not near a wall, and hurt must equal 0. 0 hurt means that I'm not blinking at all and my blinking is finished, or my character has never been hurt. That needs to be true in order for me to shoot a fireball, and that's as simple as that. If I go and press Control S to save, if you want to pause the video to get that code for yourself, there it is, but I'll press play scene. So now if I get hurt, I can't be hurt, I can't collect coins, and I can't shoot fireballs until I'm no longer hurt. In case you're wondering, what happens if you are hurt and you are in an enemy while you become no longer hurt? Well, in my case, I died, and that's appropriate. I have found, depending on the order of your code, that while you are hurt, if you become unhurt when you're over an enemy, sometimes you will squash the enemy, and sometimes you'll get hurt. I found to be a little bit inconsistent. Maybe that's an issue that you can solve for yourself, but I'm going to leave that issue where it is. But as it stands, it seems like we have a pretty good looking hurt system that works pretty well. If we are hurt, we cannot collect coins, we cannot get hurt, we cannot shoot fireballs. That's what we were aiming for, and that's what we've got. That will be it for this video though. If you like this video or if you learned something in it, please go ahead and click on that like button below. It really helps out me and my channel, and it gets these videos more seen. If you'd like to see more videos like this one in either Godot or Blender, go ahead and click on that subscribe or that bell icon below to be notified whenever I upload a new video. Check out my Facebook page and my Instagram page. In those two places, I post sneak peeks and previews of what I'm working on next for this channel, and it's where I communicate with you guys the most, except here on YouTube, of course. But that'll be it for this one. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.